Mechanically, 100%. So bodies, I like it.
Yeah.
I've just got too many little things sitting around. We're not using them, driving them.
In an industry obsessed with the newest paint job and the biggest price tag, a quiet operation out of southern Indiana chose to bet everything on machines that everyone else had already thrown away. While the giants of the equipment world built their empires on shiny new inventory, financing deals, and glossy showroom floors, one man decided the real value was sitting rusted and forgotten in a surplus yard. That man was Clinton Chitwood, and the business he built, CNC Equipment, would go on to prove that sometimes the smartest move in business is the one nobody else is willing to make. To understand why Clinton made the choices he did, you have to go back to where he grew up. Raised on a family farm in Monroe County, Indiana, Clinton spent his childhood surrounded by diesel engines, hydraulic lines, and the constant hum of machinery. His father worked in excavation, so heavy equipment wasn't a hobby or a curiosity to Clinton, it was simply part of daily life. He learned early on that a machine wasn't something you threw away the moment it got old or dirty. A machine was something you understood, something you took apart and put back together, something that earned its keep through decades of hard, honest work. That mindset would eventually put him completely out of step with where the rest of the industry was heading. Clinton founded CNC Equipment in 2004. There was no big launch, no outside funding, no grand 5-year plan pinned to a wall. It began the way thousands of small equipment businesses begin, buying used machines, fixing what was broken, and selling them to the contractors, farmers, and small operators who needed dependable iron without dealership prices. For the first few years, there was nothing particularly special about the operation. It looked like countless other regional yards scattered across the Midwest, each one competing for the same local customers and the same tired inventory. Then, around 2008, Clinton made a decision that would end up defining the entire company. He started buying decommissioned military surplus vehicles. These weren't your average trade-in trucks. These were machines that had spent years, sometimes decades, in active service with the Army, the Marine Corps, or the National Guard before finally being retired. Once the Department of Defense declared a vehicle surplus, it moved through a strict disposal pipeline, first offered to other federal agencies, then to state and local governments, and only after that, if nobody claimed it, released to public auction. By the time regular buyers got a shot at these machines, they carried a mixed bag of history, thousands of miles, years of hard use, and maintenance records that range from meticulously kept to almost non-existent. The variety coming through those auctions was staggering. One sale might include the iconic M35, better known as the Deuce and a Half, a 2.5-ton cargo truck that had been hauling gear across rough terrain since the early 1950s. Another might feature the heavier M800 or M900 series trucks, military hums from the 1980s, engineering rigs, trailers, generators, forklifts, or specialized recovery vehicles built to drag disabled equipment out of the worst possible conditions. Some of these machines had never left American soil, spending their careers on domestic bases. Others had been overseas and back. What tied them together was a level of engineering most civilian buyers had never considered. The military doesn't retire equipment just because it's old. It keeps vehicles running through strict preventive maintenance schedules, which meant that plenty of trucks rolling into auction yards looked rough on the outside, but were mechanically sound underneath, built to keep running in deserts, mountains, mud, and freezing cold, in conditions where a breakdown wasn't just inconvenient, it could be dangerous. That same toughness came with trade-offs. These trucks were slow, uncomfortable, mechanically unusual, and rarely built with a civilian driver in mind. Most buyers looked at them and saw a headache. Clinton looked at them and saw potential. He understood that with the right fabrication skills, the right mechanical know-how, and enough patience, these overlooked machines could be turned into something genuinely useful for civilian life. Their simple, rugged design meant they could keep working in remote places where modern, computer-controlled equipment would be nearly impossible to fix. Rather than selling these trucks exactly as they rolled off the auction lot, CNC began completely rebuilding them. Crew cab conversions added passenger space. Upgraded suspensions improved the ride. Custom steering setups made them easier to maneuver. Every truck that left the shop had gone through a transformation, turning old military hardware into practical tools for construction crews, ranchers, emergency responders, and buyers in some of the most remote corners of the world. Much of that fabrication work happened entirely in-house, which meant Clinton could solve problems that no catalog part could ever fix. Looking back now, it's easy to assume this was an obvious opportunity. At the time, it was anything but. The broader equipment market was racing toward computerized systems, emissions technology, and proprietary software. Clinton went the opposite direction entirely, and in doing so, built the foundation for everything CNC would become. Most equipment dealers make their living convincing customers to buy. Clinton built his reputation doing the opposite, telling people exactly when to walk away. When CNC uploaded its first video to YouTube back in October of 2012, nobody could have predicted it would eventually become one of the most trusted channels in the entire heavy equipment world. There was no production crew, no script, no marketing strategy behind it. Clinton simply turned on a camera and filmed what was already happening in his shop. While most dealers were busy polishing their equipment for glossy brochures, Clinton did the opposite, showing every machine exactly as it arrived, rust, dents, leaks, and all. His videos weren't quick, flashy clips built for a few seconds of attention. Many ran well past 40 minutes. Viewers followed him through muddy auction lots, climbed into worn-out bulldozers, and watched him tear engines apart piece by piece. Every inspection felt less like a sales pitch and more like a detective's investigation. A suspiciously fresh coat of paint. A little too much play in a bucket pin. Oil weeping from a hydraulic cylinder. A sloppy weld hiding a cracked frame. These were the kinds of details that could mean the difference between a smart purchase and a costly mistake, and Clinton pointed them out without hesitation, even when it meant walking away from machines he could have sold. That honesty became the backbone of the channel. Viewers quickly realized Clinton wasn't there to convince them that everything was a good deal. He was teaching them how to evaluate equipment like someone who had spent decades in the business. That same philosophy carried over into a growing problem in the industry: online fraud. As buying and selling heavy machinery online became more common through the 2010s, so did scams. Criminals built convincing fake dealer websites, stole photos from legitimate auction listings, and advertised equipment that never existed in the first place. Buyers from hundreds or even thousands of miles away wired large deposits, only to discover the machine was never real to begin with. Losses in these schemes often reached tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes far more. Organizations tracking equipment fraud repeatedly warned buyers about these tactics, and Clinton took it upon himself to expose them directly. His videos broke down fake listings, suspicious pricing, stolen photographs, and fabricated inspection reports, teaching viewers how to verify a seller before ever sending a dollar. In an ironic twist, by showing people how to spot dishonest dealers, he also gave them the tools to evaluate honest ones, including his own company. What made CNC's growth even more unusual is how little of it depended on traditional advertising. There were no dramatic reactions, no manufactured conflict, no promises that every machine was a hidden gem. Viewers kept coming back because they trusted what they were being told, even when the truth wasn't flattering. While much of the manufacturing world was shifting production overseas and modern equipment was becoming harder and harder to service, CNC went all in on rebuilding what already existed. That decision ran directly against the direction the entire industry had been moving for decades. Starting in the late 1990s and picking up speed through the 2000s, manufacturers poured money into cleaner diesel engines, onboard computers, electronic controls, and increasingly complex emission systems designed to meet tightening environmental standards. Machines became quieter and more efficient, but they also became so complicated that many owners could no longer fix them without a dealer's help. CNC took the opposite approach entirely. Why replace a machine that can be rebuilt? Equipment came in from auctions, fleet sales, government surplus, and private sellers, then went through a full process of teardown, inspection, repair, and upgrade inside the company's Indiana facility. Welding, fabrication, machining, hydraulic work, and custom steel fabrication all happened under one roof. One of the shop's most valuable tools wasn't a giant excavator or an expensive crane. It was a CNC plasma cutting table capable of producing precise steel parts straight from raw plate. Paired with welding and fabrication equipment, it let the team manufacture brackets, structural reinforcements, and replacement parts that were no longer available anywhere else, especially important for older military trucks and discontinued equipment where factory parts had simply stopped being made. This philosophy showed up most clearly in the military truck conversions the company became known for. Former Army cargo trucks that once hauled supplies across brutal terrain were rebuilt into practical work vehicles through extensive custom modification. Crew cab conversions added seating. Air-ride suspensions improved comfort. Custom steering setups made the trucks easier to handle. None of these upgrades came from a factory parts list. They were engineered from scratch, built through hours of measuring, cutting, welding, and refining until the job was right. The finished trucks kept the rugged reliability that made them valuable to the military, while becoming far more useful for contractors, ranchers, municipalities, and buyers working in remote parts of the world. Meanwhile, the broader equipment industry kept pushing further into electronic control systems, proprietary diagnostic software, advanced sensors, and complex emissions technology designed to meet regulations. Like the EPA's Tier 4 standards. These changes cut down on emissions and boosted efficiency, but they also transformed the ownership experience, since diagnosing a modern engine now often required specialized software and dealer-certified technicians. That shift fueled the growing right-to-repair movement, with farmers, independent mechanics, and equipment owners arguing that buying a machine should include the ability to actually fix it. Manufacturers pushed back, citing safety, emissions compliance, cybersecurity, and protection of proprietary technology. The dispute eventually made its way to lawmakers, regulators, and the courts, with companies like John Deere becoming a major flashpoint in the debate. CNC never joined the protests or lobbied anyone. Instead, Clinton simply kept building machines that owners could understand and repair with tools they already had. By the mid-2010s, the blueprint for growth seemed obvious. Expand into new markets, hire regional managers, open additional locations, chase scale. CNC did almost the exact opposite. As the company's YouTube audience grew steadily through the decade, viewership climbed into the millions, and inquiries started arriving from far beyond Indiana. The internet had erased geography for a business that once served mostly local customers, and machines were now shipping across the country and overseas. For most business owners, that kind of momentum would be the green light for aggressive expansion. For Clinton and his wife, Bridget, it became a reason to slow down and protect what they had already built. Much of the international demand came down to practicality. Buyers in remote parts of Africa, Australia, Alaska, and other isolated regions valued equipment that could be fixed with basic tools rather than proprietary software, especially in places where dealer networks were thin and replacement parts could take weeks to arrive. Clinton had recognized that need years before most of the industry caught on. By the time CNC had built out a fully equipped facility for fabrication, repair, and custom conversions, the company had every ingredient needed for rapid expansion. Large service bays, reinforced floors built for heavy machinery, advanced fabrication tools, and an online audience most marketing departments would kill for. Countless businesses have taken that kind of momentum and turned it into multiple locations, outside investors, or full-blown dealership networks. CNC had every opportunity to follow that same path, and chose not to. Clinton has explained his reasoning in plain terms over the years, saying the goal has always been to keep as much of the operation in-house as possible, because growing too fast inevitably means losing control. More locations mean more managers. More employees mean more layers of oversight. Quality gets harder to maintain, communication slows down, and decisions that once happened over a workbench start getting buried in meetings and paperwork instead. That kind of restraint stands out even more against the backdrop of American business as a whole, where expansion is treated almost universally as the measure of success, and companies chase acquisitions and market share no matter the cost to consistency. Staying small, in this case, actually required more discipline than growing big. By keeping fabrication, welding, machining, and customization under one roof instead of outsourcing it, CNC protected the very thing that made it valuable in the first place. Consistency. The company never lobbied lawmakers or positioned itself as part of a larger political movement. It simply built an alternative, quietly proving its point through action, rather than argument. As modern machines grew more dependent on electronics, GPS systems, and proprietary software, CNC kept restoring the kind of equipment that owners could actually maintain themselves, extending the working life of machines the rest of the industry had already written off. For contractors, farmers, and buyers in places where dealer support simply wasn't an option, that approach meant real independence. And because Clinton documented every part of the process, the successes, the mistakes, the hidden damage, the hard calls about whether a machine was even worth saving, the channel became something closer to an education than a sales pitch. That same transparency extended into the community around him, through support for local charities, emergency services, and events benefiting children in Brown County, Indiana. In the end, what set CNC equipment apart was never its size. It was the trust the company earned one honest video, one honest rebuild, and one honest deal at a time. While the rest of the heavy equipment world chased scale and sophistication, Clinton and Bridget Chitwood proved there was another way forward, one built on craftsmanship, repairability, and the simple idea that telling the truth is still the best long-term strategy in any business. Like, subscribe, and follow for more.